Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament Gospels, looking at the 250 events in the life of Jesus. And today we are looking at Jesus appearing to the seven disciples. And this comes from John 21, verses 1 through 14. It says, Later, Jesus appeared again to the disciples beside the Sea of Galilee. And this is how it happened. Several of the disciples were there: Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples. Simon Peter said, I'm going fishing. We'll come too, they all said. So they went out in the boat, but they caught nothing all night. At dawn, Jesus was standing at the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who he was. He called out, Fellows, have you caught any fish? No, they replied. Then he said, Throw out your net on the right hand side of the boat, and you'll get some. So they did, and they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. Then the disciple Jesus loved said to Peter, It's the Lord. When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic, for he had stripped for work, jumped into the water, and headed to shore. The others stayed with the boat and pulled the loaded net to the shore, for they were only about 100 yards from the shore. When they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them, fish cooking over a charcoal fire, and some bread. Bring some of the fish you've just caught, Jesus said. So Simon Peter went aboard and dragged the net to the shore. There were 153 large fish, and yet the net hadn't torn. Now come and have some breakfast, Jesus said. None of the disciples dared to ask him, Who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Then Jesus served them the bread and the fish. This was the third time Jesus had appeared to his disciples since he had been raised from the dead. And so, again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one. Even the notes for this one are kind of short. What this chapter is doing is this chapter is the start and tells how Jesus commissioned Peter and set this up for a conversation with Peter, which we're going to look at tomorrow. Um, and what the thought is that Peter was going to need special encouragement after his denial, after he failed in his own mind, and he did failed Jesus, denied him 3 times, and so he probably felt pretty worthless and pretty down on himself. And so the these verses 1 through 14 set the scene for what we're going to look at tomorrow. And if we look at this, and if this sounded familiar to you, it is. It's a Jesus performing the same miracle he performed. If you want to go back and remember, if you remember early on in Luke 5 verses 1 through 11, he did the exact same thing when he called them, several of them, to be his disciples. And so what we see here is only John, John references again to himself as the disciple that Jesus loved, recognized Jesus in that dim morning light, and probably remembered the miracle and stuff too. And so, because they had seen this. And so they all get back to shore, and like I said, Jesus has food. They're waiting for him, and it's going to set up the whole scene for this deep conversation with Peter. And we're going to spend a lot of time looking at that tomorrow. But the wonderful thing about this is it's so wonderful to see Jesus' forgiving nature in all this. He could have been hard on Peter, which he's not going to be, which we're going to see. But instead, he just continues to go and but again, John says this is the third time that he had appeared to them, and he's showing to them, and he is teaching them still, and getting and still preparing them for what is about to come. And he's really going to do that with Peter. But I like how, and I'm assuming he just chose to do this because he had done it before, so they would realize it was. But it's interesting to see him kind of come full circle and perform the same miracle that he performed back in Luke 5 to let them know, hey, this is it's who I am, and and then he sits there and serves them breakfast, and so it's just wonderful to see just the nature of Jesus and all this. This has been one things I wanted to do as we went through this series, is to really pay attention and look at who Jesus is, his nature, how he treats people, how he reacts to things. And I think we learn from every single one of these. And so I think it's important that we continue to dive into these and look at them and pay attention in every single message and every single reading to how Jesus was, his reactions, his teachings, and really read into that, because I think we miss that a lot of times. I think we sometimes forget to read between the lines of who Jesus is, and so I think it's important that we do that. As always, I appreciate everyone for watching. Again, I know these have been a little bit shorter, but they're shorter sections, not as much meat in a lot of them. Tomorrow's will be a little bit longer because it is there's a lot there, and there's a lot we need to read into and look at there. But as always, appreciate everyone for watching. If you hadn't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe because we're going to continue doing series like this. And as always, I appreciate everyone for watching.